Hi, welcome to our presentation on Acer, where we explore whether she should support the new direction of Acer with Aspire and understand the wider implications of the decision on the corporate direction of Acer. And we are Group 10 with our names and IDs posted. As a preface to fully understand what Acer is and the dilemma it's facing, I'll run through a timeline of the 20 years since Acer's inception. So Acer was founded in 1976 as Multitech with Stan Shi as CEO and focused on microprocessor promotion and technology, with the business centered around a poor man's philosophy and grasping every opportunity, a frugal and hungry approach. Within 2 years, they secured partnerships in Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand, small markets that the US and Japanese giants treated as too small. And by 1981, Multitech enjoyed its first mainstream success with the microprocessor computer, essentially a calculator, followed by expansion in Asia, Middle East, and LATAM over the next few years, followed with another successful offering in IBM-compatible PCs, both as an OEM and OBM. The rampaging dragon goes international was the driving principles behind the successes of 1985 and 1986, where the geographical footprint hit the US and Europe through the opening of Multitech Electronics USA and facilities in facilities in Europe. This is also complemented by Multitech launching the second 32-bit PC in 1986 globally, a huge achievement, and international high-tech starts taking note on Multitech at this point. This international notice meant Multitech was renamed following a lawsuit to how we know it now as Acer, but with a reinvigorated focus on international expansion with the purchase of Counterpoint and Service Intelligence in the US to bring in high-margin mini-computers into the offering, which ended up launching a product called Consa, which failed dramatically given the rapid obsolescence of the underlying technology. The other focus was on rapid design, development, and manufacturing of products internally, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. These years of success led to a strong public offering on the Taiwanese Stock Exchange in 1988, which funded ambitious expansion plans laid out by Stan Shi. Following this, Liu replaced Shi as CEO with the aim to bring back the discipline and communist culture with delegated accountability, management frugality, and joint ventures. He began this in 1990 with the introduction of the regional and strategic business unit structure, and by 1992 this was implemented globally. Also in 1990, Liu's move to purchase Altos proved to be a bad investment, which was quickly obsolescent as well. This saw major layoffs in 1991 through the Metamorphosis Initiative and led to the return of Shi as CEO in 1992, which came with large changes over the next 2 years, including the introduction of new philosophies including global brand, local touch, as well as a client-server model, which saw a centralized HQ supporting business units, and the fast foods concept as well, as well as other back-to-basics initiatives with Chip Up, Uniload, and more. This back-to-basics is also present in the introduction of a LATAM JV with Computech, which was accompanied by a minority acquisition of Mexico Computech. The success of these changes was clear, and an example was the introduction of 2 successful CD-ROMs from competing SBUs, really showing that client-server model coming to fruition. And this now brings us to 1995, where with Shi, we are now heading to San Francisco to decide whether Aspire, a new home PC developed by the North American subsidiary, could be the next upward turning point for Acer.
As important as it is to understand the fundamental history base, that is very important to also understand the business philosophy, which ultimately dictates the decision-making processes and how they want and direct their businesses to go. From Stan Shi's, their CEO, from the humble beginnings in Taiwan, in 1976 as a consultant, they substantially emerged as a globally recognized software and hardware player with concepts like the fast food concept, as well as utilizing retail and business strategy units like RHUs and SBUs. They expanded Acer globally at a rapid rate, going towards their principles that were 3 consistent in Shi's direction of Oasis, focusing such as frugality and the idea of rampaging the dragon. A key operational strategy was based on the smiling curve. This theory focuses on in the business parts and parts of the production chain, and in general, just business processes that added the most value. Namely, Acer's case is that this was based on product design and understanding software and hardware, as well as sales and marketing channel. The concept fits well with Acer was an organization structured with several RBUs acting as sales and marketing units and SBUs acting as houses of production, as can be seen in the graph here. Combining this with more or less the local brand approach, this really worldwide set up full welfare expansion, as well as you can see that they have spaces in most of the continents across the world, as well as a lot of strong footage and countries with growing use of internet and Acer PCs as well. Having said that, their performance at the time negatively affected the share price after the IPO raised some market concerns, but these were more or less price raised, and the new hopes and new product lines have come in and helped the business revolutionize going forward. This is effectively where the issue comes in, as in the hopeful expansion as a new product line by the ACC, American arm of Acer at the time. Having said that though, because of Acer's historically bad history in the States, especially as a result of some of the decisions of ACC, has been quite a tenuous point when it comes to Xi's decision making in terms of whether they should go ahead with Acer or not. After giving a detailed analysis of Aspire, we identify three major dilemmas that the company currently faces. Firstly, in terms of product choice, the company needs to decide whether they should adopt a focus strategy by solely focusing on the OEM products which constitute a strong revenue stream for the company, or whether they should diversify their product range to better cope with current market trends and see the various market opportunities. Secondly, in terms of product implementation, the company was also treating whether they should continue investing in their client server organizational model or centralize all decisions in Taiwan, where it is their own advantage in engineering in production is located, or they should actually decentralize it to the original business unit which are closer to the local market conditions. Additionally, the company has developed its first business models which reduces the transaction cost to support such speed and flexibility. Lastly, the company chooses whether to standardize its product design to enjoy scales of economy or adapt a market adaptation strategy to better tailor products to meet local consumer needs.
To better understand Acer's strategy, we analyzed Acer in light of the AAA framework. In its initial years, Acer followed an arbitrage strategy and entered early into the contract manufacturing of personal computers. Acer used economic arbitrage by benefiting from Taiwan's low labor cost and cheap availability of essential components. Moreover, Acer also employed geographic arbitrage, as by expanding into neighboring countries, Acer made use of geographic proximity, which included, for example, low transport and communication costs. And finally, Acer also used administrative arbitrage, as it avoided stamp duties by producing in Taiwan, but then moving the assembling to local and regional units. Overall, Acer's arbitrage strategy allowed the company to grow and expand quickly while maintaining profitable in its early years. From the 1990s onwards, as Acer started to expand globally, the company increasingly adopted an aggregation strategy in addition to its already existing arbitrage strategy. The rationale for this two-track approach was based on Acer's global brand local touch philosophy. The goal was to collaborate with local partners to gain access to local markets while continuing to benefit from Acer's low-cost product strategy. In practice, this meant that Acer formed joint ventures with local partners in several foreign markets to gain local knowledge, while partners would benefit from Acer's global brand name. Overall, the global brand local touch strategy enabled Acer to expand quickly into foreign markets without initial large investments. However, this two-track approach already started to create coordination issues that we will elaborate on shortly. As an extension of the global brand local touch strategy, Acer implemented its client-server organization model based on the every man is lord of his castle concept. Each business unit could leverage its own ideas without having to go through the corporate center in Taiwan. By providing SBUs with authority and independency, Acer aimed to motivate each unit to maximize its own growth and profitability, which then in turn was supposed to directly benefit the overall performance of the Acer Group. The main practical implication was that the clients and servers were separated according to product lines or regions, with the SBUs mainly responsible for designing, developing and producing components, and the RBUs for the OEM sales and marketing. Moreover, employees were hired locally, and Acer gradually replaced Taiwanese managers with local managers. However, the combination of a loose chain of command and the lack of a well-developed information system made it difficult for Acer to coordinate business processes across its business units. And also it complicated Acer's ability to respond to new challenges that hit the company in the second half of the 1990s. In summary, Acer moved from its initial arbitrage strategy to a two-track approach with an additional focus on first aggregation and eventually adaptation strategy. However, as each unit was only responsible for its own profit-loss results, the management of the units often made decisions that made sense for their own unit but had a negative impact on other units and the company as a whole. So, for example, manufacturing sites would produce components at full capacity without considering the inventory problem caused at the assembly locations. This resulted in coordination problems, duplication of functions and investments, and the inefficient use of enterprise resources, which altogether increased the company's costs and reduced its profitability. In our recommendation section, we will elaborate on how Acer should adopt its AAA strategy, also taking into account our recommendation regarding the Aspire project.
We can look at Acer's entry mode into different markets to evaluate the most effective way Acer could drive the success of Aspire. Acquisitions like Altos provided strategic assets and access to high-potential advanced markets. Acer benefits from vertical spillovers here as they absorb knowledge in other aspects of their value chain, such as product development and design, whilst also benefiting from information on consumer preferences and distribution networks in advanced markets. Joint ventures such as the 19% acquisition of Computec, Acer's Mexican distributor, has increased their flexibility and adaptability in the dynamic PC market. Eventually, the ACLA IPO'd on the Mexican Stock Exchange, enabling Acer to raise capital and visibility for potential investors. Through vertical FDI, Acer can leverage Computec's downstream position in the Mexican market, expanding Acer's market reach and consumer base in Mexico and other Latin American markets. This strategy also enabled Acer to become Mexico's leading PC brand. Wholly owned subsidiaries, although the more risky and expensive option, was used to establish the ACI, responsible for overseeing operations in Asia, Africa, and other emerging markets. This allows Acer to transfer its technological and managerial expertise to these regions and integrate its core competencies with local resources. By doing so, Acer could exploit its ownership advantages whilst mitigating risks and uncertainties associated with joint ventures or acquisitions, such as their intellectual property control in different institutional environments.
Next, I'll be analyzing Acer's domestic competitive advantage. The domestic competitive advantage of Acer in Taiwan mainly lies in 4 aspects, which are reputation, product quality, supply chain, and R&D capability. For reputation, Acer has established itself as a reputable and trustworthy brand in Taiwan and in the international markets. However, the potential problem is it has a strong reputation as an OEM producer, but not necessarily in their own product offerings for PCs, especially when the product and sales specialist comparing with the well-known PC brands. So this advantage is only partially transferable. For quality product, Acer has a strong engineering team in Taiwan that works closely with the production team to ensure the high quality of products. However, innovative design for Aspire means new components. The lack of standardization in new hardware and tooling may result in a limited economy of scale in the short term, which may put a limit on the quality assurance and cost effectiveness as well. For the supply chain, Acer can leverage its close relationships with suppliers in Taiwan, which enables Acer to source high-quality components and raw materials at competitive prices. This is an advantage as it provides reliable and efficient supply chain for Aspire. Adding new routes into the supply chain should be easy. For research and development capacity, skilled engineers in Taiwan working with AAC local engineers can help Aspire in terms of performance. However, as the case mentioned, the American team is an inexperienced RVU and has limited resources. So the negative consequence of this is that the established competitors may launch their own multimedia home PCs even before Acer, grabbing the market shares. So in summary, Acer has a strong domestic competitive advantage, but whether it can successfully transfer its advantage to the American market still faces some problems. Next, we use the VRIO framework to assess Acer's ownership advantage, which are value creating, rarity, immutability, and organization. It can help determine whether Acer has a sustained competitive advantage over Aspire. As analyzed in the previous slide, Acer's strong supply chain and distribution network is a valuable, rare, and hard to imitate resource. This is definitely a competitive edge to the Aspire project. However, when it comes to organizational structure, Acer faces a dilemma. The client-server organization model that Acer proposed, with different client business units and supported by the server units in Taiwan. While this allowed for flexibility and agility, it may also create problems within the organization and made it difficult to coordinate efforts across different units. Additionally, it can potentially lead to a proliferation of different brands and product lines, making it difficult to create a unified brand identity. Its implications to SBI are negative because Acer is not utilizing the resource to its full potential. As the case mentioned, there was better engineering expertise in Taiwan, and the American business unit had no experience in collaboration with foreign teams or developing a product with this much innovation. The unused advantage from Acer's organization structure can leave SBI vulnerable to the well-established PC competitors. Therefore, it is important for Acer to leverage its unused competitive advantages in Taiwan to reduce financial and operational risk in SBI projects. By doing so, Acer can create a sustained competitive advantage on SBI to achieve long-term success.
Aspire investment would reflect the high market potential driven by increased internet use and trends of working from home in advanced PC markets. Therefore, Acer would require an entry mode that leverages both economic and geographic arbitrage strategies to drive sales, raise capital, and reduce costs enabled through vertical spillovers from RBUs that would propel Acer's reputation as a globally competitive PC manufacturer. Although there is an inherent trade-off between control and access to advanced markets, joint ventures and acquisitions would be a preferable entry mode in the case of Aspire. Engaging in partnerships and acquiring established companies in advanced PC markets enables Acer to benefit from location-specific knowledge transfer from workers in respective high-growth potential markets. Acer can therefore leverage existing downstream distribution channels to expand their customer base while synergizing and integrating their partners' assets and knowledge through the client-server model. Additionally, these options permit the sharing of risks and costs, helping Acer to overcome the liability of foreignness in advanced PC markets. Advanced markets where the demand for multimedia computers are high and employment sectors enable working from home are most suitable for Aspire investment. Therefore, Acer should focus its expansion in markets like the US and Europe. We can justify this using the Cage framework. In terms of cultural distance, Acer should focus its expansion into markets where consumers have preferences aligned with aspects of Aspire, lending itself to consumer bases who would utilize its multimedia capabilities whilst appreciating its unique design relative to markets who are just accessing the internet for the first time. In terms of administrative distance, Acer should focus on the institutional quality of each location, mitigating risk to intellectual property whilst ensuring contracts are enforced and transaction costs are reduced for acquisitions and joint ventures. Expanding through RBUs in Europe and America, Acer would benefit from these markets' strong legal and economic institutions who have designated bodies to ensure contracts are protected and enforced, whilst also creating a favourable business environment for FDI. In terms of geographic distance, if Acer was to expand into advanced markets whilst using the client-server model, the propensity to achieve scale economy increases, especially as they expand their product offerings from beyond OEC goods. This means the potential to reduce transportation costs increases, which is also aided by quality infrastructure in advanced economies. In terms of economic distance, due to the nature of these advanced economies, consumers derive a higher purchasing power relative to less advanced economies, where employment typically generates lower income and are not geared towards working from home.
Our final recommendation is for Acer to follow through with the project, but to produce it locally in Taiwan rather than to allow for a full development within the AAC frame. This strategy follows Gemma Watt's A for aggregation strategy, which involves concentrating certain activities in a particular location or region to achieve scale or other benefits, while dispersing other activities to other locations or regions where they can be performed most efficiently or effectively. Firstly, looking at the OLI framework, we know that FDI occurs where all three sets of OLI occur simultaneously. This is untrue for Acer, where we understand that Acer mainly benefits from only its ownership advantage, as explained by Tian Yi in her VRIO framework. In terms of location-specific advantage, we know that the AAC does not have appropriate structures and capabilities to fully exploit the resources at hand, whereas Acer in Taiwan does. In terms of internalization advantages, given that the AAC already exists the knowledge of the local market, it can be analyzed locally and transferred to the headquarters in Taiwan. There may also be high institutional and cultural costs of developing an entirely new product in the US. Secondly, in terms of global value chains, we find that Zod's 2021 analysis of less fragmented manufacturing GVCs, more concentrated value-added GVCs to be true. This means that under this project, Acer should focus on simplification and localization of value chains. This leads to a shorter and less fragmented value chain within the industry, and also helps them become more resistant to shocks and enhances flexibility. Hence, Aspire will be able to compete with global players within the home PC industry as it intended to. Does this strategy necessitate a change in the AAA strategy? Yes. Acer, which currently prioritizes all three prongs of the AA framework, should limit their focus in this case to just aggregating the production of Aspire PCs. This approach will ultimately benefit from lower production costs in general. And with that, we thank you.